Right. So, Hat, can you say something? So you're the first person on screen right now.
Awesome. Hey, Akash, thanks so much for connecting with us, and thanks so much for helping us put this together. Really excited to be here discussing this little tightrope dance that I'm sure every engineer or every person in software kind of thinks of every once in a while. So excited, and thank you for having us here.
Yeah, thanks, Hat. So I'll get into it right now. So hello everyone and welcome to the latest edition of the Permissionless Learning Podcast. Today we have the CEO and CTO of Influx Worldwide with us. Influx Worldwide is an organization which is bringing cinemas to the 21st century with their suite of services and products. And today they're going to help us answer the question of which type of company should you join? Is it product-based companies? Is it service-based companies? Maybe both. So there's a third type of company that people really don't have a lot of knowledge about, which is product service hybrid companies. There are some good examples of that, like Apple, Xerox, Oracle, and TiVo. And there are many more companies which you haven't heard about because they failed. And as Hat has rightly said on a previous podcast, the road to service companies, the road for service to product companies is filled with body bags. So Hat, why don't you start right now and give us an introduction about yourself?
Thanks. Yeah, I started Influx way back in 2000 and I don't know what the exact time frame is, but I'd say 2005 is the official year. I was 21 and I started off being, like every Indian's dream of trying to, get into software and build something. But I was really passionate about UI UX, which was something I think that helped me stand apart in the Indian software space. We started by building websites. But unlike most people who are looking westward for business, I focused on Indian clients because there was something about helping Indian clients and helping Indian businesses. And which is why I remember in our initial few websites, we also had a little tag at the bottom that said proudly Indian. So that's where we started from, but you soon realize that the well dries up very quickly, in terms of the monies that you can make before you have to actually look westwards. So but we had a great run, and I think just organically as a company we got sucked into this world of movie theaters. And it's I guess it's kind of a bittersweet blessing because it's very sweet because I think it's a niche that we've managed to find and become the best in the world at. And I think it's something that I always advocate, that no matter how small a niche that you can find, right, as long as you can be the absolute best in the world. So you could be the best person who can row a fiberglass boat with the left hand on a Tuesday. But if you can be the absolute best in the world at that, you should strive to be for that, right? And that's what it was for us with movie theaters and guest-facing digital solutions. And yeah, therefore, so we found that little niche, and we became the best in the world at that. And soon we realized that the work that we do, can be replicable, right? And which is why after years of treating them as projects, we said, hey, it's important for us to try and leverage some of these bits to improve our go-to-market, to quicken the process, therefore increase profitability. And that's why we've been straddling that tightrope of becoming a product company while trying to make sure that you're not becoming just a product company, because you can afford to do that if you have enough funding, or if you have enough money to throw around, where you can become a pure product company. Otherwise, every single project company that wants to become a product company has only one path, which is to essentially find anchor clients, get them to pay for your development work, and then try to make those as components or modules of a product that eventually is born. So yeah, that's just been the journey of Influx. We started out in Chennai in India, and then we moved westwards. We have a presence in Dubai, which is where I am right now, and we also have a presence in the United States. And yeah, I think we're a fairly global company today. We work with clients all over, and it's been an exciting journey. And I guess given the rough weather of the cinema industry and this business in general, given the pandemic, the fact that I think we've come out stronger gives us a lot to look forward to in this year.
Right. Yeah, thanks for that intro, Hat. So you're obviously not doing this by yourself. You have a technical co-founder with you who is leading the technical part of things. So why don't you introduce him?
Yeah, I mean, Jesus actually, you can call him technical co-founder. You can call him the right brain. You can, sorry, the left brain. You can call him, whatever you like. But the truth is, I'm somebody who just doesn't know anything about software. I'd like to believe I'm an entirely right brain person as well. I doubt I even have that, but I have some of it, I guess. But I've always counted on people smarter than I around me to help really grow this company. And Jesu definitely, obviously, fills right in there. And it's been exciting to have him around, sort of grooming the tech team, take it to the next level. Um, so yeah, very excited to have him join me here, and loving that he's getting a minute of spotlight right here.
Yeah, Jesu, why don't you talk a little bit about the work that you do as well?
Thanks, Akash. Thanks, Hat. Joining Influx has been quite a change in my life. I've seen some very difficult challenges here, which you don't get to see in some of the other multinational organizations that I've worked with. I've been in the thick of things, and it's been a fantastic journey. And one of the things that I've sort of lived by is, if you can't explain it simply, you haven't got it. You don't understand it. And that's something that I keep telling everyone that I meet in the technical world. If you can't explain it, then don't come to me.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Jason. I think that's a short and sweet intro. Uh, Now, I think we should go more into the depths of Influx itself. So, yeah, why don't you or had talk about how Influx started? So, Influx is something with a 15-year history, right? So, why don't you talk about how it started and what the meaning behind the name is?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I just need to be mindful of time because we're already over by 3 minutes from the first segment. But no, I'll keep this short and sweet. So we started Influx. Like I said, it was literally a high school project. It was something that I was in high school, and I did work with the software company for a month, and I made a decent amount of money. And then uh, I realized that I want to be by myself. So it started off with me and a couple of other friends, and I was my dad made me drop out of college. It's funny to even hear that, right? Because essentially, I started this in high school, stopped it for the 12th final years, right? Obviously, where I had to focus on my exams, and then I got into law school, and I was doing really well in law school. I was ranking in the university. I was excelling at moot courts, representing India globally at moot courts. And one fine day in my third year, my dad tells me that you should drop out of college. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, you should be pursuing your passions. Right now you think you're very happy what you're doing, but 30 years down, you will only regret not following your passions. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What are my passions? And he's like, remember what you were doing in high school, that stuff, building websites that you wanted to do? That's what you should do. And in my head, I'm going, what is this man smoking, right? I mean, this is my South Indian Brahmin dad telling me to drop out of my college. But he meant it. He meant it. And the only thing running through my head at that point was, oh God, which girl's dad is going to let me marry her if I don't have a degree? And then I'm like, we'll figure it out along the way. So the reason we named it Influx is when those three little friends, when one other friend, Anuj, and I sat down one day. This was over Hotmail MSN Messenger, and we were chatting with each other. And we used to be called Comport Technologies right back
Okay.
then. Right back then, it was very influenced by this brand in the US called Comp USA. I don't know if anybody is listening to this podcast or this podcast is going to even remember it, but there was a brand called Comp USA, and I literally ripped their logo off to make Comport Technologies communication portal. And listen, this is a time when the biggest name in software is Microsoft, right? So you're obviously going to think of this two-word, a little little compositions. And then I'm sitting and chatting with Anuj, and we're like, listen, so, it's too old a name. We're two young guys. I was 20 at that point. He was 19. And we're like, let's come up with something more fun. And we're like, what's going to be unique? What's going to be unique about working with us? It's going to be the fact that we're so young, and there's going to be a constant inflow of new ideas. And there's going to be a constant influx of ideas. And we're like, hey, that's pretty cool. And also the fact that because we're so young, we're going to be evolving at such a rapid rate that we're always going to be in a state of flux, and we're always going to be in flux. And that's where it started. And it just fit so perfectly with everything the business. And funnily, I've always believed that a name needs to stand the test of time. Well, people don't think of this when they start. They don't think about it when they get into it, initially. But then the name stood the test of time. I still think it's as relevant and as cool as it is today. So
Yeah, makes sense. And that's quite an interesting story about how you thought of the name there. So what was the core team that you started with, and what was the first niche that you were trying to conquer?
look, in terms of a niche team or a core team, I don't think there ever initially really was a core team, except for those two buddies of mine with who I tried to start. But then both of them very quickly realized that their parents weren't exactly their parents weren't exactly excited about them dropping out of college. So it was not an option. They had to, go back and do college, and Anuj moved to the US, and Rohit continued to pursue his studies locally. And so there wasn't really that core team, but I guess it's the people that I brought on board. So for example, we have people on our team, and I know we're going to talk about them in a little while, who've been here for years. Like they've been on my team for like 8, 9. We in fact celebrated it last year. We read a LinkedIn post where we just put up a post to everybody who's done over, I think, 5 or 7 years. Keith and I was the one who put that together. And there were like quite a bunch of them. And so I guess that has become the core team. Today, we have, of course, Dodo, who's our CEO. We have Gopi's our global director of finance. Along the way, I've had Amit, who's been very close all very close to being a co-founder on the commercial side. And of course, there was Mahesh, who was a CTO who we had, who was still around as a technical advisor. So I think my core team has almost been the large team in general. And I think we've just been very blessed. It's funny because just a couple of days ago, I was in a Uber with my colleague Ilam, with me in Dallas. And it's funny what he said. He said, what's interesting is this is a company where no matter who leaves, the company never seems to slow down. And I said, that's one of the classic tenets of a great company, is where you make people indispensable, right? Dispensable. It's important to never be so dependent on someone. You got to only be as dependent on the system, not as dependent on the people, right? And I think that's why we managed to sort of stay successful.
I think that's also called as the bus factor, right? If how many employees have to be hit with a bus before you don't function correctly.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, and it comes up at every single VC meeting because officially on the cap table I don't have another founder, so it comes up on every single VC meeting.
Okay, interesting. So why did Influx choose the niche of cinema?
Like I said, we didn't choose it; it chose us. I remember there was a little stunt that I pulled in starting to work with the Reliance ADA group, Anil Dhirubhai Ambani group, back then when the split was announced by Kokilaben Ambani. I just did a couple of stunts by which I ended up working with the Reliance ADA group, and then the Reliance ADA group had just acquired Ad Labs, and we had just done the Reliance RCom website, the Reliance Communications website. And I guess we were doing a lot of work internally with Zapak and Big FM and all of those Reliance ADA brands back then. And since they just acquired Ad Labs, I was introduced to Tushar Dhingra, who was the then CEO of Ad Labs Cinemas. And I think we both got excited of our energy. He was really excited to be working as someone as young as I was. We're talking 2005, so I was 21 back then. And
Right.
I felt I had this little playground, right? I could do whatever I wanted. And those of you tuning in from Mumbai who probably know, in Vadala you have the giant IMAX. I had an opportunity to wrap that whole damn thing in a web. Sorry, I had the opportunity to wrap that whole dome in a spider's web when Spider-Man first came out. And we
Oh,
mocked that same essentially campaign on the homepage. Now these are the kind of stuff that was not even seen on cinema sites in India, and that's where the journey started. We started with them. We then got called in by another exhibitor from south of India called Satyam Cinemas. Then we worked with Inox, then we worked with PVR. We got sucked into the vortex of the world, like I said.
right. Yeah, ad labs and Zapak, those are certainly words I haven't heard since my childhood. So that 2005, that's like I think 16 years ago. So like what has evolved since then in terms of Influx and the work that you've been doing?
Look, along the way, I guess we had to adapt and realize that we're no longer a website development company, right? Because that's what we started doing. And very soon, just at the turn of the century, in fact, we were already behind the curve when it came to being able to work with apps. But I think we managed to make that transition pretty quickly. But we realized that we wanted to be a digital agency because apparently that was a thing, towards the mid 2000s, and therefore we tried to do social media and SEO and everything digital. And again, we realized we cannot be good at everything. We cannot really. We've done everything. We've even done event management, and as a company,
Oh, okay.
we had an in-house events division. But again, the events we did were very tech-oriented. Like in the sense, we did an event with Shah Rukh Khan, Deepika Padukone bunch for a sari brand that we organized. But there was this huge element of tech in terms of what is happening on stage. But soon you realize those are distractions. Those are distractions, and they're not part of the long-term strategy. And it takes time to figure it out. You don't sit down at a table and say, okay, what is my strategy exactly going to be? It's hard to do that. You've got to kind of go with the flow. You pick and choose. You go the ebb and the flow, and therefore along the way it's been interesting to say, okay, no, you know what we are? We are a customer-focused but B2B software development company, agnostic of platform, but just here to provide the most delightful customer experience possible, right? And it doesn't have to be in cinemas. Today we are in cinemas, but the way we are thinking of everything we're doing is essentially aimed towards any space that has a fixed capacity and needs to attract people to come in and put butts in seats. That's what we call it in our business. So
Okay, so I think that's a nice segue to the next topic, which is like how does Influx serve their customers? Like, what services do you provide? What products are you offering, and what do you want to focus on?
yeah, like I said, we believe we are here to work with any segment, not just cinemas. Like I said, cinemas chose us, but we continue to work in other segments as well. Even today, although it represents a minority of the business, but I think COVID reminded us that it's important to kind of not have too many eggs in the same basket. So I think in terms of offerings, we work. The one thing that makes it very strong is we are omni-channel. So as a company, we try to satisfy a customer journey from a 360-degree perspective. So starting from on-site or other, physical retail locations where we, look at things like kiosks and handheld devices, and going all the way back to the start of the customer journey and focusing on things like websites and mobile apps and wearables and any other way in which a customer wants to interact. We are platform agnostic. That's something that I think Jason and the tech team have done pretty impressively. Also with the fact that we have enough wide variety of developers in-house. So I think we're platform agnostic. The only thing we're very particular about is we want to solve a real problem. We don't want just to go in to build another website. We're I think too large a company to be able to be financially competitive when such a bid comes up, and B, I think we'd just be incredibly bored. That's all we were doing. So I think, it's important to realize that we are a development agency, let's say, but we like to A, focus on enterprise, and B, look at solving a real problem for the enterprise.
Right. All right. So why don't you go a little bit into the details of the product offerings, for example, since we are talking about products versus services here?
Yeah. So like I said, having done so much work with cinemas, and when I say so much, we work with more than 40 different cinema theater chains across the world. And like with any sector in the world, you have these certain players, who dominate it, like 3-4 large players. Like in finance, you have, I think, Finacle, and you have the FlexCube, which are two of the leading sort of softwares that the ERPs that drive those businesses. Similarly, if you're talking the travel industry or the aviation side, you have Amadeus, you have Sabre, which are like the core softwares that run that business. So similarly, even the cinema industry has 2 or 3 very key software providers that run the ERPs behind the business. And our premise essentially was to be like this enrichment layer on top of these POSs, because all these POSs are like legacy companies. They're large companies, but to them, their development pipeline is most important, and it's not important what their customers want. It is even less important what their customer wants. So we came in as this enrichment layer on top of these legacy point of sale companies or ERP companies to say, let's prioritize the guest, right? And therefore come up with features and modules that can take that further. And therefore, it's in doing that we realize that, hey, you're doing the same things again and again, right? Why should we just not help build this in a modular fashion which we can reuse, and try to normalize saying, hey, my customer, it doesn't matter what technology platform you're on, we're here to integrate with any of them, because we know there are 3-4 players. So that's what, in fact, I think that was Jesus in the first project that he came in, as we built Engine, which is like the smart middleware that normalizes saying whatever different platform you may have, right? It doesn't matter. You could be on ticketing system A, you could be on gift card system B, food and beverage system C, but if you want tomorrow to move away from F&B system A to B, you can do so, because we've built this normalized layer in between called Engine. So that was a good segue. And the second was, of course, because the cinema industry is generally considered to be so behind the curve, and it's true. They are not necessarily setting the technology charts on fire. We took it upon ourselves to try and bring in some of these innovations, and so we started bringing them in as either sub products, which are. For example, we have something called Intake, which is our food and beverage ordering microsite that can be attached to any existing website, to make it easy to order food online. Or we have, for example, Infinity, which is our subscription product, which helps people, if you want to offer like a subscription to go to the theaters, you could do that as well. So it's that's been sort of our constantly evolving product journey, where we either found ways to make our work easier, quicker, faster, more profitable, and therefore build products for that internal need, or where it was meant to solving a particular problem in our customer segment. And again, like I said, we use the cinema industry as our sort of testing ground, but then it's always going to be aimed at any market. So our subscription software, I can use the same thing tomorrow in a winery, right? People who want to start a wine club, right? So that's how it's been designed. So
you're creating industry agnostic software, which is basically like an abstraction layer over all of the existing technologies to make it easy for like these places to be able to move between softwares quickly. And
see, that just sounded so much sexier. That just sounded so much sexier than how I said it. Dude, you're awesome.
Thank you. But yeah, it seems like you're just making it easier for them to not worry about the underlying apps that they're using, I guess.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Awesome. So yeah, we are going to be talking about what kind of people you hire, but I think before that, we should let Jesu do some talking and talk about the tech stack and like what kind of technologies you use to build all of these softwares. So Jesu, if you're here right now, why don't you get started?
Yeah. So leading on from what Hat said in terms of how we have this mechanism where we can bridge different components together. So that's easier for customers and our clients to focus on the business. We are mostly placed out on.
Sorry, one sec. Hey, Akash, would it help if I shared a diagram of that thing? Just as Jesu starts talking technical, would you care if I maybe shared a diagram so your people at least who are watching and not just listening and can maybe get a better sense of what we mean?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay. Sorry, Jesu, I didn't mean to hijack your.
Sure. I mean, a picture speaks 1,000 words, so we can. There we go.
So just very quickly, just to reiterate what I was saying, and I don't mean to hijack Jason, but I always do as Keithan says. But so the bottom is the systems layer, which is what the businesses typically already have in place, and it covers different parts of their business, and therefore they need softwares that work best for those different parts of the business, and that is ingested into our middleware layer, which is called Engine. And Engine has two sides to it. There's Engine, the middleware, which brings in the flexibility. And there's Engine Manager, which is the CMS, which is what the customer uses to control their customer and their touch points, which gives them control. And this essentially is wired through to all the different customer-facing products. So for example, these were our legacy products. This was born out of the need of the pandemic. Similarly, the ability to automate and sell private cinema. So we can keep adding as many different front-end solutions as required. And this gives us the ability to plug in innovations on the side as features.
Since you mentioned the pandemic twice, I'm assuming that the change that occurred was more cinemas tried to bring things like their menus online, which is where your product for the microsite helped, I guess.
That's correct. They soon realized that there was nobody coming to the theater. They had to shut the theaters. So it started with them trying to say, if you're watching Netflix and Hulu and all of these platforms at home, come to the theater and buy our popcorn and sit at home and watch it. But they had no means of selling it on a curbside. So that's where we came up with this. Yeah, so that was just the start. Then, of course, there was the private cinema where they were like, okay, you'll feel comfortable if you could buy out an entire auditorium, right? And we built this end-to-end process to be able to do that. And yeah.
Okay.
Jesu, back to Jesu. I should stop now.
Thanks, Ed. But this is quite interesting. So I have something to point at and discuss here. So,
Jesu, sorry. Why don't you talk a little bit more about the tech stack part of each of these layers?
I'm going to talk about the tech stack, Akash. So on what you're seeing right in the middle of that diagram is Engine, and we use a variety of technologies here, and it's mostly based out of AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. So we work with all three of these major cloud players. And within this, you'd see that we use a multitude of functionalities, including Node.js, MySQL, Go, Lambda functions, Redis. So there's plenty of things going on in this middleware to get what we need in terms of requests per second. Now, in terms of website, again, the technology is varied. We support and work with PHP-based .NET, and of late, we moved on to React.js to help with the more innovative and responsive build. On the mobile app side, we use Kotlin, Swift, and then we have started using React Native as well so that we can have a more hybrid application working on. And behind all of these, yes, we still have JavaScript, Java, and HTML working in the background. So that sort of puts our generalized tech stack into place, Akash. It's yeah, quite a varied thing. It's not MERN or LAMP, a simple tech stack. It is a variety of tech stack because there's a variety of devices and client environments to deal with.
Got it. So
could I just comment on the tech stack for a second, if you don't mind?
Please
go ahead, Matt.
Yeah. So just from an out there perspective, right? So it's, because I'm the one there selling to customers, you realize that, like Jesu rightly said, one is you have such an incredible array of devices that your end customer uses, right? So you've got to be able to design for that. Secondly, given we're working with enterprises, it's you have to fit into their technology environment as well. You can't be on an island in building whatever you're building, right? And these guys typically either tend to be Microsoft shops, or they tend to be, most often the Microsoft shops. So while the technologies that we use may not necessarily be considered the coolest out there or the most cutting edge, it's the fact that we have to work, and the fact that these existing software that we work with are so legacy that some of the choices that we make are not necessarily determined by what's going to be the next coolest thing we build, but more in terms of what will actually work. So.
I think it's a good point, yeah, because some of these have fixed environments, and yes, even though we work with Microsoft, we work with .NET Core, so that makes things a lot more easier if the client later decides to go into the next level with Microsoft.
Got it. I think that gives a good insight into the kind of technologies that Influx uses, and I guess is probably looking for in candidates they're hiring. So since we are also talking about hiring in this podcast, so Jesu or even Hat, why don't you talk about the degree requirements or the kind of requirements that you have for candidates that you're hiring? Because you certainly have stories about people without any degrees or without even the right skills, but with the right mindset, joining Influx and then staying there for like several years. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
JC, you go first when people are sick of listening to me already.
Yeah. So it's for me, the recruitment mantra is very simple. We are looking for people who are interested in programming, who are interested in coding, who are interested in solving challenges. And these challenges needs to be customer focused and technology to aid the customers. It's not that because I have this technology, I will solve a problem in a particular way. It's basically being customer focused, and that changes the dynamic of things a fair amount.
Right.
So that's basically what I'm looking at. And I've been very honest with all the people I've recruited. Don't care about the degree that you have. As long as you can show me how you can code and you can convince me, then I'm good. That's been my mantra, and it's been very successful. I've been very successful with that in terms of getting some very good people along the way. Been in this industry for about 20-25 years, and it's never let me down.
Okay. So basically you're looking for, in terms of technologies, you're looking for like solutions to existing problems, not solutions in search of problems, I would say.
Yes. Solutions. No. Let me take a step back. For every problem that's been out there, there is already an existing solution and probably a design pattern to conquer that in a reasonable way. Now, what businesses do keep doing is throwing a curveball at us, for which sometimes nobody has found a solution, and that's what I'm interested in. How do I solve that particular problem? And that's why we are in this particular niche area as well. Sorry about that. So yes, Akash, it's a matter of them being able to code. If I have to put this in another way, you would have seen this. You work with people. You give them a problem. The first thing, where do they go, Akash?
Probably if you, Google, I guess, yeah.
Yeah. So how do I find a unique list in my array? They don't think. They go to Google, copy paste code, and that's where I want to go away from. Okay, I want developers who can actually use their brains as opposed to using Google, because Google has stupid snippets in them.
Right.
In fact, just to add, Jesu made a comment about I don't care what degree they have. The truth is, I don't care whether they have a degree. not even the question whether they have. I'm the last person. I don't have a degree myself. I don't even have a bachelor's degree. So I cannot be just sitting on a high horse or, in my little ivory tower saying I need people with degrees. It doesn't matter, man. I don't think the degree really matters. It's the chutzpah, right? And I think or even experience for that matter. I mean, experience matters, but I don't think it's the be all and end all. Like, I remember this guy on our team called Karthison. This was 2005. I had just moved into a new office. This angel investor had come and saved the day, and he had said, "Here's some money. Go grow the business." So we moved into a new office. December 13, 2005. I remember the day so clearly, and we just opened. So we were having a good time, and said like 5-6 of us who were the first people who had hired, and my other co-founders. Then I guess Rohit and Anuj. All of a sudden, this guy walks in. This guy walks into the door, and he says, "Hi, my name is Kats, and I'm from Karunya Institute of Technology in Tamil Nadu near Coimbatore, and I just passed out, and I wanted to get and I want a job." And I'm going, "You want a job? Okay, but you just passed out." And I'm like, "Can you?" And we had a requirement then to code in PHP, and I was like, "We need someone who can code in PHP." And he said, "I don't know, sir, but I'll learn." I'm like, "Okay." "And how long will you take to learn?" I said, "Sir, give me 3 days."
Okay.
"What?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Give me 3 days." I said, "Okay." And I had this book I had bought, I guess, for myself, which is that PHP for Dummies. And I gave that also to him, saying, "Whatever else you're trying to do, here, read this book also." In 3 days, he came back. And I guess whoever was the next smartest tech person on my team then, I had said, find some way to evaluate the guy. And guess what? The guy was able to do it. He literally learned it in 3 days. Now, whether he learned PHP or he learned some coding patterns or he learned some design patterns, I don't know what it was, but he was able to write a program and execute it in PHP. So, classic example of how you don't need to have a degree, to be able to to do something. But and then there are more recent examples as well. There's a school in Bangalore called Masai, which is like a finishing school or a training school for developers. Highly recommend them because I think they put out some fantastic talent. MASAI, Masai. We grabbed Tanveer from them about 2 years ago now, and he was absolutely fresh from there, and he's been a great asset. Why? I guess we could even talk about Naga or Nagaraj, who's one of our PMs and very beloved team members globally across our staff. He came to us from a shipping company 10 years ago. He was a project manager. We needed a project manager in the midst of our PVR project, and we had to save the day. And he came on board from a shipping company. All it took was the right attitude. I'll get it done. I'll get it done no matter what.
Right. Yeah, I think those are good examples about all of the kinds of people who have already been at Influx. So, Jesu, why don't you? Yeah, nowadays
It's funny. Sorry, one thing. I have our CEO Dodo texting me on the side saying, "Hey, for crying out loud, Jesu is a BSc in physics."
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, Jesu, nowadays we have these like distinctions, right? Front end dev, back end dev, full stack dev. So what do you think about these? Like, does Influx have these distinct roles? And if it does, like, what are the different requirements that you have for each of these three types?
Very good question. Do we have roles for each of these, front end, back end, and full stack? Now, it's a mix of all things, Akash. And what I've seen predominantly is people will learn full stack, so a MERN stack or a LAMP stack. They can achieve trivial things. More complex things require more complex time spent on a particular area. And the type of technology we work in the back end versus the type of technology we work on UI, UX, these become divided over time. So within Influx, yes, we would like to have dedicated front-end developers who can think from a UI, UX aspect from a customer's point of view. What are the latest features that a mobile app like Apple iOS provide or Android provide, and how do I make my application work well with those particular set of features without the client having to have a bunch of learning curve to understand how our application works, or making the web as intuitive as possible to do this. So that's a very different ball game as opposing to working the back end on how do I do caching or how do I access my database. So it is divided at the moment, front and back end, and that's how I see it progressing.
So your requirements for front end does seem to be someone who has an innate understanding of how to make a good UX on a website or make a usable website, I would say, because that's something not a lot of people would be thinking about. And for backend dev, like what would be your requirement, you would say, if you summarize it down to a line or two?
Backend development is a matter of meeting the number of requests per second. Essentially, it boils down to that. If you can write an API which can be thrashed around with taking very little memory and CPU, that's what we need on a cloud environment. On the front end, if you can get your application looking and working almost as intuitive as any app, that's what I would want from the front end. A front end is also largely design and marketing based, so it's a complete different ball game altogether. Front end is a lot more interesting because you're facing pixel precision design and working there.
Yeah, in fact, two words on the front end side that matter to me are customer interaction. That's all it is. It's all to do with how the customer interacts and what is their emotion when they use your front end, right? It's not a transactional thing. Yes, it performs transactions. That's the outcome, but it's an emotional experience of reacting to using your application, and therefore, I don't know if front end people actually think of this, that there is a whole emotional angle to what you do.
Right.
Yeah. Just to add to the back of that, Akash, if you're looking at from what had said, you look at your banking site or any other site, you have a bunch of boxes to fill in. But with the type of websites that we are working with, it is trying to achieve a transaction or keeping the customer engaged so that he can actually buy something. And that's almost the same sort of technology or mantra followed by some of the other e-commerce sites. If somebody lands on my website, can I convert him into a sale rather than just browse and enter? Leave the site. Now, of course, the transactional sites that most people do when they start learning is filling out a few boxes, like a student or a school or some other project that they do. So this is completely different. It's a whole different ball game.
Okay. So going ahead from here, like had talked about Masai School, which is basically a coding boot camp. So you guys talked about you're primarily focused on hiring based on skills and that you don't care about the degree. So I think coding boot camps are something which would probably be the way forward for how people are finding jobs in tech. So yeah, what are your opinions on the current boot camps? I mean, do they actually prepare developers for real jobs? What more things does a bootcamp grad need to know before he gets there?
Brace yourselves, everyone. Prepare yourselves and get ready to be unleashed by Dr. Jesu.
Okay. Now, bootcamp is a sort of a terminology that's been invented, but the concept has long existed. I think the first company in India which came up with this on a large scale was NIIT. So they had 6-month courses, 1-year courses where you can learn what you couldn't learn in college or even in your master's. So they prepared you for a work environment. And they did a very good job. Of late, we have these 6-month courses or 1-year courses, which we call as boot camps, and they are effective in a way that they teach you the fundamentals of programming. So yes, you get to know a language, you get to do a few projects, but bootcamp helps you about that. Doesn't take you any further than that. They don't help you to analyze whether you have any sort of success rate with your particular application. So it is much better than so somebody leaving college and going through a boot camp, they end up with a lot more skill set as opposed to a person who joins the company just after finishing his college or just after finishing a school. So they have literally, we have to teach them programming. So boot camp actually takes away that pain. And to some extent, we've had people coming through that who have shown interest in the boot camp, therefore they're able to excel. But those who just take it as, yep, somebody pushed me to go to boot camp, I went to boot camp, but I don't know how to write an if statement, that's not going to help anyone.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. I think you didn't go into the depths of how you, I guess, completely feel about bootcamp graduates, but I think that this is a good introduction about what you kind of expect from bootcamp grads.
I sort of touched on it, Akash, in terms of, yeah, so boot camps, as I said, do help to a certain extent. It's not that after you finish boot camp, you become a programmer. You still learned something. It's just that you've learned something. Now it's whether you can be a programmer based on that is a completely different ball game.
Got it. Yeah. So what should bootcamp grads do then to?
Jesu, on Instagram and on TikTok, filters make things better. When it comes to sessions like this, filters make things worse. Take your filter off. And now let's answer Akash's question that he just asked.
Okay. Thanks for putting me in a spot, Hat. Appreciate that. So Akash, no, I'm not sure if there's anything more to add to this. Basically, bootcamp, as I said, is a place where people learn. It's not something that they suddenly come out with flying wings. If you're expecting something different from me, then I don't have one at the moment. It's basically another coaching class, if you like, and people can come out of it good or not. The only challenge down there is most of the boot camps are they do both the front end and the back end full stack developers. And what I've actually learned about that, it's not spelled as FULL full stack developers, it's FOOL stack developers. So that's what I end up with when I interview people. They know a little bit of front end, they know a little bit of the back end, but they hardly can work with both. So that's what they go through. And people going through bootcamp will have to understand that when they join a job, the requirement for full stack is completely different, where you're trying to do your front end either with a mobile app or a web responsive app, and trying to marry that with a back end, which has a completely different set of business logic and work requirements. But what you do in a bootcamp is as simple as, can I have a school library system or a school attendance system or a school examination system? And that's very, very primitive.
I see. So yeah, basically, I guess it would be fair to say that people should be spending more time on real world problems after graduating from a boot camp to be more job ready, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, as I said, the boot camp gives you a first stepping stone to understanding what programming is, what real life programming is. But the way that you take and assimilate information from these bootcamp sessions is what is important. Just because you've gone through a MERN or LAMP stack in a boot camp doesn't mean you become an expert. It's just that you know how to spell Mern and lamp. That's what I would consider.
Okay. I think that's a good zinger to end on, but yeah, definitely we are talking more about helping these people here. So I think this would be helpful for anyone who's just graduated from a boot camp and wanting to learn more, I guess.
Yes, as I said, it does give them a flavor of the programming. So companies don't have to go through the pain of trying to tell them this is a syntax for a particular language. For example, if somebody is coming out of a MERN stack, I don't have to tell him what an express is. I don't have to tell him the syntax on how to use MongoDB or React or Node.js. They come with that particular, hopefully they come with that particular standard, that they know the language and the syntax and how they can put things together. But what we can then, as a business, I can then focus on trying to get the important things out to them, like how do I develop my UI being faced customer focused, or how do I create my backend for a particular cloud environment with a particular technology we use in the cloud, so that I can focus more on that as opposed to teaching them raw syntax. And that's the advantage of targeting boot camps.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So why don't we get a little bit more into a typical day at Influx, or the kind of jobs that Influx is offering? So firstly, why don't you talk a little bit about how working at a product service hybrid company is different from either a completely products company or a full service company?
Okay, and I'm going to jump in on this first, and you can fill in the gaps.
All you.
Okay. So some of the things that my team has been aghast on what I make them do, Akash, is I give them a requirement. The requirement is basically a couple of lines or a short email. Now, this can be a guy who's fresh out of boot camp, who's got experience from another company, who's come from a multinational company, but this is what they get to deal with. And then they get to figure out what the requirement is and the business reason for that requirement. Now, once we understand the business reason, some of these guys get to do the architecture as well. Okay. Now, if you're looking at the front end, it's like, do I have a wireframe for this? And from the wireframe, what am I going to do with it? How am I going to structure this? So they get to do the entire middle end middleware, what tech that they want to use for that particular customer. On the back end, they're looking at what APIs do I need to do, what third parties do I need to integrate with, and how does my flow from one system to another system, or one service to another system. So they get to do the architecture. Now, this is a good thing about working in service product-oriented companies, where you get to see and work with this from day one, as opposed to, here you go, you write this function, you got 2 days time to finish that function. And you can do some TDD on that particular function, and then you show me the results. This guy has no clue where this function is going to be used, how is it going to be used, in which system or product is going to be integrated. All he knows is he has a low-level design document for a function or a bunch of functions.
Right. Although
Okay.
I guess this is still possible in a services company as well, but I guess you guys must be doing something additional to you're placing that trust on your employees that they will be able to solve a business problem themselves, I guess.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's where that we try and tap in on that influx concept, Akash, because if every person is capable of thinking, if you put them in the right place at the right time, and they do deliver at some particular point in time. So we do understand that concept. So I've seen time and again people coming with innovative answers to solutions rather than churning the old dough over and over again.
Right.
Yeah. And of course, if you have to get more technical, the solution is vetted by people more senior to him. But the challenge is, yes, these guys do come up with good solutions. It's a fresh mind. It's yeah, we get a lot of interesting options doing it this way, as opposed to the same old, same old.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So, based on this follow-up question, who do you guys think is Influx for, and who is it probably not for? I think it's a good lead-on question from what we just discussed about how work at Influx happens. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
So who is it for? On the technical side, it is basically for those who want a good bite of challenge. They don't mind the hours and they don't mind the beer. That's whom it is for. And the interesting thing is they should be willing to work for a challenge as opposed to a desk job. And if a programmer cannot be curious on why and asking the why questions, then he's not fit for Influx.
Okay.
Hat, you want to add something on?
My toddler decided to add himself to the call, so guys, ignore that. I can't help it. But no, I think everything you said is absolutely true, and I don't think there's much else to add on. I think I often hear Jesu ruminating about how people just not even choosing to think and how they need to be. So I apologize for this.
No worries, it adds variety to the call.
It's a boy story. No, it's just to be clear. So it's still no variety, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess the final question about what people should expect from Influx. Do you guys do exclusive hires? Like if someone's backend, they stay backend throughout their career at Influx, or if they're front end, they stay front end. So how do people grow inside Influx, basically?
So that's a very good question, Akash. There are multitude of layers in which people can find an appropriate position. For example, on the front end side, we do have things which we can do only with HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Okay, and then you have more complex things to do with React and React Native applications. You have even more complicated things to do when you're working with third-party systems like your swiping machines, credit card swiping machines. So there are different layers into which people can start working with, even from a front-end integration perspective. On the back end, yes, you have again, you start with your job as being innovative as possible to starting to vet solutions or troubleshoot what's happening on the server side when your servers just fall flat on its face because of the load. So there is a variety of things that you can be doing within this company. Now, the obvious question is, can a front-end developer become a back-end developer? Or a back-end developer become a front-end developer? I haven't seen a back-end developer become a front-end developer. I haven't seen that. On the rare occasion, I've seen front-end developers who say, okay, hang on, I'm fed up of doing HTML, CSS. I like a lot of coding with JavaScript or React, so I would actually try my luck with doing the back-end as well. So that's where they make the transition from being just a front-end developer to start becoming a full-stack developer. I've also seen people who can do Kotlin and Swift do a little bit of backend. But of course, then you have the bigger category of PHP, .NET Core, and .NET, where both of these sort of intermixed all along the way. You truly don't have a front-end per se, because that stops at just the HTML, CSS bit. But then most of it is done in the middleware, in the .NET Core and classic .NET or PHP. So yes, this is they get to do a variety of things as the years go by, with the complexity of tasks that they do. Front-end developers do become back-end developers if they have an interest to it, but I've never seen a back-end developer actually become a front-end developer.
I see. I think that's fair. And yeah.
If I could just tack on a little bit to the differences between working at a full service company or like a service company versus a product company versus a hybrid. Jason touched upon it, and I think he touched upon something very valuable. At multiple places in this conversation. As a developer, when you go into, let's say, work with Fang, right, the dream of all of these developers these days, of wanting to work with one of those big tech companies, you essentially tend to, and again, I could be wrong, but yes, you might be tasked with trying to keep the infrastructure necessities or needs or costs below a particular threshold, but in reality, it doesn't really matter to them, right? Whereas in our case, Jesu often tends to get very perturbed. But the way I like to challenge the team is I try to give my clients a single price that never changes. And therefore, I bake into it the cost of infrastructure, which means inefficiencies in code become extremely apparent because that immediately impacts the infrastructure bill, which is coming out of our pockets. It's not something that's just passed through. And in fact, I will call out our team and say that the one client where it's not on our credit card, but it is on the client's credit card, it's very, very efficiently written. And it's been constantly evolving to get better over time. So I think that's, think of it, right? As a developer, if you're in your early 20s and you're actually getting to understand the commercial side of the work that you're doing as well, and where, the efficiencies of the code actually impact the cost of a project. I think that's pretty good exposure.
Right. So you're intentionally adding limitations to what a developer can do to make them improve their help them be more efficient within those limitations.
Yeah. And in fact, two other things that come to mind when people often talk to me about working at Influx, my own team, or even people who've just left. One is, of course, the fact that they tell us that at Influx there was no silo for them. They worked end to end. They touched every single piece of the software development lifecycle, which I think is quite unique to working with any hybrid or I guess in most product companies, services companies, I think, but I don't know if it's unique to us, but you typically get access to everything from doing the DB design, architecting. You will be involved. You will be involved all the way through to your CI/CD and DevOps and downtime and all of that. So I think that's pretty cool. The second thing is, I think, just the atmosphere that Influx has created. People have told me how they make friends for life here. It comes back to the typical day that you spoke about, comes back to, who's this for? If you want to make lifelong friends, and if you want to, do everything else that Jason spoke about in terms of, being able to work on real projects, solve real world problems, use your head, Influx is a good place.
Just touching on what had said Akash there. So my developers, when they come, they think they are developers, okay? But what they eventually start doing is they start working with requirements, working with project managers, business analysts, working with clients, doing the coding. And the most easiest part of your coding is starting your code. And the most difficult part of your coding is having it actually go into production, because most programmers would understand this. You can write code, but seeing your code working in production for a client is when the dynamics change. Okay, sometimes your code never makes it to production, or it's put into the back burner. And these guys actually see their code working in production. What do I mean by this? I've had to teach the guys how to work with Nginx, configure Nginx in the background, work with either Azure virtual machines or AWS EC2 instances, work with Elastic Cache or Memcache or Elasticsearch. They get to configure all this. They get to see how all their bits and pieces fall into place.
What about your beloved Redis cache?
including that's Memcache, Redis cache. Yeah, they get to see the metrics that's happening. They get to see the data bytes that are being transferred and the how things are slowing down or helping them. So that's actually marking them, and I mean that's making them fully developed, or they understand what the implications of having multiple for loops within their system is doing. So it's a great way that they understand things, because yes, right from requirement or from birth till it goes into a full-fledged production where they see, okay, the server is going down, oh, it's gone down, what have I done wrong? They get to see that it's not that they produce the code and then they can go back home and be happy, and somebody else deals with the mess. They deal with the mess.
Okay. I think that's fair. So yeah, going ahead from here, like since one of the largest allures of working for service-based companies is that you sometimes get to travel for on-site opportunities or even relocate there. So are there any such opportunities at Influx, given that you're working with a mostly American and Dubai-based clientele?
Yeah, in fact, right now we have Ilam and Gopi who are in Dallas. I'm here in Dubai. Ilam's been there for the last 3 months on a particular project that he's been helping take live, a product actually, a subscription. And he flies back on 17th. Jesu and Pratik are expected to fly back sometime mid-March, I apologize, mid-March, because we have a slew of deployments coming up. CinemaCon, which is our biggest cinema industry event, and then we participate in a pretty nice way, is end of April. So long story short, yes, I am somebody who loves travel. I come from a background, my mom was a travel agent, and I've just loved travel all my life, and I'd love to actually be the catalyst that helps give a lot of these people their first flight. It's a very, very fulfilling feeling when whether it's the first time they leave the country or just the first time that they even take a flight. As for that reason, they'll never forget me. Or they'll remember me. Is something that's very dear to my heart. So without a doubt, I always encourage people to travel. I believe in face-to-face interactions. I was recently even saying that Misbah on our team, she should visit her client in Saudi. Bhupati Naga knows Dubai as well as anybody would. Bhupati has been on site here trying to get kiosks live, on a ridiculous time frame when clients throw those challenges. So no, I'm all for travel. I believe travel makes the world better and people even better. So COVID restrictions notwithstanding, I'd be happy to, let people travel as much as they want.
Yeah. And are these one-off events, or like people have been traveling for?
That's a good question. We don't really have an on-site model, because I think that's weird. It's more about going for very strategic reasons where you need to be for, let's say, a 15-day or a 3-month duration. That would be the key. It's not really, we're not here to sponsor a B1, B2 visa and get people to go on site and work at 1/3 the cost, and then we add a 2/3 markup. That's not our model. We don't even charge our clients, by the way, for site visits. We don't charge them separately for having a resource available in their country, because for me, if somebody is going to be sitting under the client's nose, that project will get done quicker, which means we get paid quicker, which means we have more profit. And to me, that's more valuable than charging the client an additional 1/100th of the project, but it doesn't really change anything about it.
Makes sense. So yeah, right now we come to the final part of our interview. Why don't you guys tell the viewers about the open positions at Influx and what they can expect? I mean, yeah, what open positions you're currently hiring for?
Jesu, you?
Yeah. Okay.
And I know that even from the last time Akash and we spoke to now, even yesterday, I think that our requirement is always Influx. Good, Jason.
Yeah. So we have openings in almost all the core languages that we use at the moment. So starting with Node.js to Swift to React and PHP and HTML, just working with HTML and CSS. There are vacancies in all these places with varying numbers. For example, I think in Node, I have about 5 vacancies, and React, I think there's a couple of vacancies. In PHP, there's one. So it's across the board that we're looking at. So not just the technical side, it's non-technical side. On the PM, project managers and business analysts, there are vacancies there as well. So we are on a recruitment spree for good people who can get the job done.
iOS, Android as well. I think there are some requirements that I saw floated the other day. All I know is we have about 23 openings right now. That represents roughly 1/4 of our existing team size. So we're looking to grow by 25%. We need to do it ultra fast, and I want to take, and we're a company, we talk a lot about being, while we talk about open positions, I think it's important for us to talk about the open culture as well. We try to be as open as possible in terms of our finances, our commercials. Almost everybody in the company would know about our project values. We share that fairly openly. But in the spirit of openness, I would also want to take a second to use this platform to reach out and thank every one of everyone at Influx, because it's not been easy working with this company, because I always say that as a company, Influx has bigger ambitions than its bank balance. And that's the truth. And that's the reason we've been able to grow as well. And while we're trying to straddle this fine line of going from a project company to a product company, it's been a bootstrap journey, and it's not easy, because you've got to deliver work to get paid. And once you get paid is when you pay your people and you pay your bills, and you're able to expand and grow the company. We pay really well. I'm very proud of that. We pay really good numbers. At the same time, Jason will be the first to say we're not here to throw stupid money at just because somebody is out of a boot camp. That's not how it works. There is a reality check in the real world. Problem is there are not enough companies out there offering that reality check. The problem is every developer today has 5 job offers. But I think the thing to be considered is that, is it the money that's going to make you 15 years from now, or is it when you look back and you look at the journey, right? So, and I think that's something that people should consider. But at the same time, I think, so coming back to my point, we pay really well, but we've had our challenges. And I think it's incredibly heartwarming to hear my team, like our attrition rate is single digit, like low single digits, despite the fact that, and I'm happy to be open about this, that there is no set paycheck date at Influx. It keeps varying, not by too much, but it does keep varying. But we try to keep people informed, say, this is when you're going to get paid, this is what you're going to get. But I think why people, I guess because we pay a good amount, they're willing to adjust with those vagaries. But coming back to my original point, I want to thank my team for being very, very supportive. We have very low attrition rates. We have fantastic support from our team, and that's what really made this company what it is. I think is the fact that, because, and it's a two-way street, I suppose, right? The reason they are willing to endure such situations, hardships, and the pandemic with us is because they know that it's a fun journey and that they get to learn so much from great leaders like Jesu. But at the same time, I don't know if we say thank you enough to the team. So here's me reaching out and saying thank each one of you for everything you've done for us and for sticking by with us. So appreciate it a lot.
All right. I think that's a good shout out to your team. And yeah, the points that you put forth is fair. Like, you made your requirement clear, and that if anyone's finding a match, they should reach out to you. So why don't you talk about the pitch of let's build great, for example, and the weird letters inside of it?
Yeah, it's camel case, or it's whatever case, I guess. Yeah, let's build great is a mantra that I think a few years ago we hit upon, and it's something that's very dear to my heart. If you can't wake up each morning and believe that you're going to go over and beyond for a customer, then there's no point of waking up and going to work wherever you may be working. At Influx, I'd like to believe it needs to be a part of the DNA. I don't think 100% of the team necessarily still get it, but there are examples when it really warms my heart. I would like to call out Hari Krishnan from Jesu's team, who, and I remember a particular example. He's from the engineering team. There was a group call going on, large call, and then they were trying to get something done. And I remember Hari going, and Hari's a full stack dev, really, really smart dev, whose time is very valuable, and he works on multiple projects and on products. And someone's explaining the problem to Hari. I think it's a PM who's trying to solution it in a particular way. And Hari goes, yeah, that's very easy for me to do, but that's not what is going to help the customer. To help the customer, this is how I think it should be done. And it was more work for him, but that's what he stood up for. And till today, I get goosebumps when I think of that, because that is the definition of let's build great. It's not just doing what you were asked to do. It's not just Googling the first available solution. It's about trying to think, how can I really make this better? How can my existence in this universe and these fingers on this keyboard try and actually make something unique and therefore better? And to me, that's the definition of let's build great. But otherwise, there is a whole blog post about it on our company blog. There's a video where I spend an inordinate amount of time on the screen, but please do watch, where I explain let's build great in a lot better manner, I feel. But to me, that's what it is. It's about you bringing your absolute best. It's about you bringing your passion to your work.
Okay, makes sense. So we've had a few questions so far. One of which is, are you looking for experienced devs or freshers? I guess you kind of answered that you're trying to find the right people for the job, but still, why don't you try and answer this one?
It's if they have the appropriate experience and the appropriate fields that I'm talking about, it's a jump start for the team and for them. And on freshers, yes, freshers who have learned the programming languages that we currently use, yes, we are interested in them as well. So we are open to both.
I'll tell you who we are not open to. I'll tell you who we are also not open to.
Yeah, please do.
Is people whose families come with the expectation that if you have a fancy company's name where you work, that it will look very good on your wedding invite. The number of people at Influx that we've lost, literally, I would say nearly 50% have left because they had to go get married, and their family said, oh, if you work at an HCL or you go work at a Zoho, it'll look better on my wedding invite. It's stunning that we are in 2022 trying to build these fantastic world of tomorrow. We talk about virtual reality and stuff, but this retrograde stuff still happens. It's incredible.
Yeah, that's the reality of the world we live in, I guess.
Because that's not us, right? You're not going to go get a better bride because you're working at Influx. It's just not going to happen. You might be a smarter guy, and therefore you may get a nicer girl. That's different, and that I can promise you, because we also have a really good hit rate of people who either join us and end up getting married. And so it's counterintuitive, right? People actually, and we should find a way to get the numbers out. But the number of people who join Influx and actually gotten married within the first 3 to 6 months is incredibly high. The number of people who join Influx and then get pregnant is even higher. It's insane. It's insane, given how much I guess everyone works. I don't know how they even make the time, but more power to them.
Yeah, you're really helping India's population there, I guess. And yeah, finally, where can people find you guys, and where should people apply for jobs?
Log on to our website, and there is an application form with 17 fields where you have to attach 3. No, I'm just kidding, guys. Just find Jesu or me on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm at @6363 on Twitter. Tweet me, post to us, email us, do whatever you like. We are open anywhere. So just find any way to say, hey, I like your story, I want to be a part of it, or you want to learn more, and we can set up some time and do it. So any way. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Hat. Thanks, Jesu. I think this has been a super interesting broadcast. Any closing words you want to add?
No, I think Akash, really impressive what you're doing. I think you're working to build an audience in the tech community, which I think is great to see, because I think you're able to facilitate an exchange of thoughts and ideas, giving people like us the opportunity to reach out to talent like yourselves, which I think is also pretty amazing. And I wish you all the best, Akash. And I hope you have, of course, more and more companies that reach out, and I hope we've managed to bust some bubbles today, or myths, about working at product and services companies. We try and make it exciting. We try and make it unique.
Yeah.
We try and make it a fun journey. And therefore, I hope some people who are listening to this or watching this try us out, I suppose.
Yeah. I think we have a few more questions if you have the time to answer them right now.
Yeah, sure. We're already over by 22 minutes, so might as well, I guess.
Yeah. So one of them is like, what's the hiring process going to be like? Is that something you want to discuss now, or when you're talking with the candidates?
I make up my mind. I'm sorry, I will let Jesu talk about it, but I make up my mind in the first 5 seconds of talking to someone, literally. But Jesu obviously a lot more rigorous and a lot more methodical. So over to you, Jesu.
The hiring process is very simple, Akash. We get on a phone call, a video call at this stage. Previously, it used to be a physical visit to the office, but it's a video call now. We find out what the person is doing. We give them an online test. We look at what they're doing. They keep talking to us as they do the test so that we understand what they're thinking. And at the end of it, we decide which way to go. It's as simple as that.
Makes sense.
Nothing complicated. It's just one interview. You don't have to jump through 7 loops with 7 different teams to get a job.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
I hate the concept of rounds, man. I hate that concept.
Yeah, that's the most annoying bit. I mean, I think one interview is good enough to figure out whether you want to hire someone. So that's nice that you guys are doing that as well. And
yes.
Are you guys hiring someone with a Java Spring Boot experience? That's someone.
Say again?
That's what someone's asking on. Are you hiring people with Java Spring Boot experience?
Java Spring Boot at the moment, no, Akash, unfortunately.
All right. So yeah, I think that answers that question as well. And yeah, I don't think we have any other questions right now. So yeah, thanks guys for joining. Jason, any closing words from your side?
No, Akash.
All
I
right.
think I had summarized it quite well on what we do. And yes, the only thing is it's an exciting journey within Influx. And as Hat mentioned, it is the technology and the inquisitiveness to solve problems that keeps us together on the technical side. So, and that's the type of people we want as well. So if you're inquisitive, if you're curious, and if you can ask the 5 whys, and you can actually write some code, then it is us.
Got it. Makes sense. Thanks for that summation, Jesu. All right then, guys. It was nice chatting with you, and I'll be seeing you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye-bye.